A new book edited by ASU professor Neil Ester presents a collection of essays and reflections regarding practical approaches to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The book is titled Social Justice in Action, Models for Campus and Community. Neil Ester joins us now. We should note that he'll be appearing at Changing Hands in Phoenix tomorrow night, 6:30?
6:30, Camelback.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, Third Avenue, somewhere around.
Somewhere.
It's the one in Phoenix, not
yes,
the one in Tempe.
Yes, correct.
All right, let's get going here. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
By the way. Define social justice.
See, I knew you were going to ask me that. And that's exactly what we try not to do in the course of putting this book together with 30 other people, is we sort of show social justice rather than trying to define it. Once we try to define it, then it tends to sort of get murky and muddy. What we do try to define, though, or to point out, is what injustice is. And that is much easier to identify than trying to figure out some uniform definition of justice.
What is social?
Well, social is people. And so if we ask this question, are we losing our humanity? And then we start looking at things like respect, integrity, kindness, empathy, self-reflection, forgiveness, then we start saying who is being denied that? And are we denying ourselves that when we engage with other people?
Okay. In this collection of essays, who is, as far as the essays are concerned and the writers and folk, who are they saying is being denied what you just talked about?
Well, it's not about who's being denied. It's about the extent to which we all, on some level, may be experiencing, whether it is food insecurity, whether it's environmental justice, whether it's menstrual equity, whether it's racial justice, economic justice. It's who's being denied humanity. So the idea is not to look at a group and point fingers, but to say, how are we trying to address an inequity that we are witnessing? So there's no question about what is unjust now, or unjust. And what injustice is, it's how are we practicing that?
And you want a practical approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, those bad words, yes.
What does that mean?
Well, it's really not the boogie person that people have made it out to be. It really is about humanity, which is what I try to look at through these lens of what we call Humanity 101. It's, are we respecting people with whom we disagree? Are we extending compassion and kindness, even if we disagree about these things? So to what extent are we practicing this notion that I can respect you even though we disagree? And that's a real tall order, and not many are practicing that. So I'm hoping that this will be a toolbox to give people some strategies.
The impact of things like the pandemic,
yes,
of things like George Floyd,
yes,
the impact of those things, yes, on what's being written in that book and what you collected.
Yes. Well, this started in 2017, and I thought I was just writing about Charlottesville and the travesty and the tragedy that was there. And it came from being one of those people on the expert Rolodex for many people saying, how do we fix racism? How do we solve this? How do we fix that? Sexism, misogyny, how do we, and I don't have an answer for that. I didn't create it, so therefore I don't have a magic pill for it or a potion for it. And when I'd finish my talks and presentations, people would say, well, tell me what to do. And then George Floyd happened and the pandemic happened, and it was a chance to sort of reflect even more on health inequities, injustices. Many of us saw George Floyd die right before our eyes, and we knew something was wrong with that, no matter what we called it. People started asking, what can I do? What can I do? And my first question or response was, well, what are you doing? And there was a pause, and people say, well, tell me what to do, because I don't know what it's like to be black. And I say, well, fortunately, if we look at empathy in a way that I'm suggesting we look, you don't have to be, you just have to be with. So you don't have to be me in order to be an ally. So let me give you a toolbox of strategies. But I thought, well, I can't tell everybody that, so why not create a volume where lots of people have perspectives on it in different formats. So they're not all essays. Some are poetry, some are skits, some are essays, some are interviews.
And people from performing arts, I think there's a biologist in
here. There's an evolutionary biologist talking about social justice, yes.
Architecture is involved
There's an
here
architect,
as well.
Yes.
All right.
Dancers.
Yeah,
actors.
Yes, and people reflecting kind of interspersed within the
reflecting and
essays.
Analyzing. So it's not just a journal. It's not just a personal kind of diary. It really is about how do you analyze, how do you understand, and what are people doing? It's one thing to think about it. The other thing is to see it in action. That's the title.
Okay, you mentioned the title. I talked about how practical approaches to diversity, equity, inclusion, and you kind of mentioned, yes, those bad words, whatever. We know what's going.
It's not bad for me. It's bad for some
I know,
folks.
but you were responding to the
yes.
current climate, and let's talk about the current climate, because we just had an election where DEI was a pejorative. Yes. And the person and the groups using it as a pejorative,
yes.
They won an election. What's going on here?
Well, that's interesting because I never thought that my book would take this long to sort of be birthed. And it's interesting that the lessons in the book are still relevant now as they were when I started this 7 years ago. That's not a good thing. I think the good thing is that it's still helpful and it's still relevant and it's still timeless. People are people, no matter what our circumstances. And I think people are looking for ways to be better and to do better. And I have to believe in the faith of humanity. As James Baldwin says, I can't be a pessimist because I believe that we can be better and do better. And that's really what the volume is about, is how are people doing better and how do people feel like they're exerting some control over our own lives.
And that's what you want folks to take from the book.
Well, that's one of the things, but I can't project what people will take from it. I just hope they pick it up and read it,
right,
and they'll identify with something in there. So there's a buffet of options and opportunities.
So when I ask who is the book written for, you say
the book is written for all of us.
Okay,
it's for you.
But is it an academic book that it's going to be over my head and I can't understand what the heck you're talking
Absolutely not.
about?
That is so not what I do. In fact, I'm not part of that little group of people who only write for two people. In fact, that's why I ask K through 12 educators. That's why I'd ask an actor to do it. That's why I'd ask a dancer to do it. Why I'd ask, retirees to do it. I've asked an HBCU president to write. I've got museum directors. I've got librarians in there. And that was also one of the challenges for my publisher because they wanted the traditional scholars, and about only half of the people in the volume are actually quote unquote traditional scholars because I want this to be about everybody.
Yeah, accessibility.
So this is for everybody.
Yeah,
that's a hard book to write.
Yeah. Well, you got it in there. Congratulations on that. It must feel great just to have the book on your lap.
It feels great. I wish the need was not as intense as it is, but it seems the election bears out, and the place is nearly packed tomorrow in terms of registrations. So
yeah.
It'll be part therapy session, and the contributors will be there also, the local ones to share.
Interesting.
So it'll not just be me.
6:30, Changing Hands in Phoenix. Neil Lester, Social Justice in Action.
Yes.
Always a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you
Good to
so
see
much
you again.
for your interest. Yes.